Hey everyone, it's Noel Christopher coming to you with a new video. You know, a couple weeks ago I posted a video with the intention of continuing to post videos on a consistent basis, and then I went on a stint where I traveled a ton. So I was on the road for the last month pretty much consistently, which is typical for me in the spring. I end up doing a lot of travel. There's a lot of pent-up demand of where I need to be. And so, I started out at the NRHC, which is a National Rental Home Council. Went to that industry leaders conference, and while that organization is evolving to serve investors more, and I have some feedback and ideas on that, but it was great to connect with old friends and spend some time with colleagues in the industry who are either have or are currently doing great things in the industry, whether it's in the build-to-rent or the single-family rental industry. And speaking of the single-family rental industry, when I think of single-family rental, I think of scattered site single-family. And then when I talk about build-to-rent, it's obviously build-to-rent communities. There seems to be a renewed interest, which I spoke about last time, about back into the scattered site single-family rental. It's less of a trade. There's a lot more protection of your investment as far as your hedge of the broader market, and there's a lot of funds that are trying to figure out how to get back into that. And since that conference, I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different groups that are either capital or existing capital that's figuring out, okay, how do we get back into single-family rental, scattered site? There's a lot of interest, frankly, in what Bay Group or Genstone offers, because we service a lot of investors. And so, we have tens of thousands of investors that are single-family rental investors that we service loans for, that we offer products to and services to, from whether it's asset management all the way down to buying properties, managing properties, remodeling properties, selling properties, and I'm focused more in that investment space, but the company overall is also focused on the retail side. But what I'm seeing in the market is there are a lot of people trying to figure out what's next. And it's funny because ever since the end of 2022, people have been figuring out what's next. And every year around this time, there gets to be this certain amount of optimism in the market. But I can tell you this, if that optimism is based off of interest rates going down, I don't see that happening in 2025. Maybe an unpopular opinion, but I don't see interest rates going down in the next 6 months. I just don't see it happening. What's happening in the market and the politics and all those things. So what's going to happen? What can cause investors to move? Well, the fact is, the small and mid-sized investors have continued to buy, and they continue to buy, and they continue to need services. They continue to need financing. They need, asset management. When I talk about asset management there, I'm talking about, optimizing their portfolio, helping them to buy more, helping them to cull part of their portfolio, helping them with insurance, helping them manage better. That is not going away, and that's not going to go away. It's a bulk of the market. I believe there's a niche in the market for the mid-size investor, and that's what we're doing a lot of focus on. And so, the last few weeks I've been all around with some conferences and travel for work, and seeing and really talking to investors and seeing what's happening in the marketplace, and seeing what we're doing to provide those investors with a lot of great things, and working on some really interesting partnerships and opportunities that can help us accelerate what we're doing. And so there's a lot of interesting things happening in the market. If you're wondering what's happening in single-family homes and single-family rentals, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the waterfalls for the FHA mortgages, to keep them out of foreclosure going away. That's something that's interesting to keep an eye on. Is that going to move the markets? I think the market's already moving. There's a lot of talk about the different markets, like, for example, Denver, Colorado. A lot of stuff online about that right now, about how the inventory has gone up, and inventory has gone up in a lot of these different markets, and there's a lot of different reasons for that. So I'll talk about that in another video sometime. But you're seeing more inventory, you're seeing more downward pressure on pricing, but really more downward pressure on appreciation. Question's going to be, is there going to be enough pain in the market to cause prices to go down? There is an affordability issue. The first-time home buyer is no longer 35 years old. It's they're younger, or I'm sorry, the average home buyer is no longer around 35 years old. They're more like 55 years old as the average person of buying a house, if you look up some of that data. So that's just an interesting dynamic on what's happening in the homeowner market, as you have more baby boomers aging out of properties, for a lot of different reasons, unfortunately. You know, I have parents that are much older and figuring out what they're going to do with their end of life as far as their housing, and is that the right kind of inventory that's going to help the market? I need more affordable housing. So a lot of the funds and people we've talked to are in that affordable housing space and wanting to try to solve that problem. But is the inventory there to do that? And is the regulatory environment on a local level in the position to allow the building of affordable housing? And so that's a big question. So I could go on and on and on about this. So I'm going to cut the video off here and I'll do another one to talk more about some of this stuff. But that's my train of thought that I'm thinking about this morning. And I would love some feedback and what you want to see more of. Thanks.